FTX Crypto Cup in Miami. Pragg won it in Blitz tiebreaks. So let's see what happens today. Will Magnus be out for revenge? If Magnus wins in the rapid portion, he will win the tour finals. 4 rapid games to decide the match, 3 points for the winner. If they are tied, then it will be decided in tiebreaks, 2 points for the winner and 1 point for the loser. And here we go.
Here we go, and Jovanka's going to be very happy. Magnus opening with the Carlsen defense yet again.
I am extremely happy. My favorite opening on the board, and I'm a little bit worried because Magnus is pausing. There you go. He hasn't shaken my faith in the Carlsen, and here comes a light squared bishop, and this is such a trendy move right now. It's so tricky as well, and black normally handles this h4 push by actually copying, and once again the players are following the fashion, and now the light square bishop comes out and offers a trade, and this is very, very thematic. He pushes the e pawn forward 1 square forward. This actually isn't the line that I recommend or play, but it is still very good.
Yeah.
Lots of action are going to be on the board. Pragmatic Pragg. Going for the most critical lines.
The one thing I will say about Magnus's opening choice is the Carlsen. It's a great opening, but his results there are far inferior to his results in nearly every other opening. Magnus with 1 e5, with the Sicilian, with the French, scores really well. But in the Carlsen, he's had many defeats and often does find himself in these really difficult positions. I think that's because Magnus, he wants the space advantage. And here, if anyone, it's white in the centre of the board, having stepped forward quite far. It's white with that extra space. So I'm slightly worried in terms of chess style. This favours Pragg. Pragg will get very active play, and Magnus already thinking at this early stage, a very well-known position, as Jovanka mentioned. Yeah. And that's a slightly worrying sign for Magnus's fans.
It is slightly worrying, and I do have to say that Pragg has played a slightly unusual second move. I mean, it's only very slightly unusual because usually the dark squared bishop comes out and attacks the queen, but I don't see any reason why Magnus can't go into my favourite variation, which is actually to give a check to the white king. Put the queen on a5.
Yep, and that does preface a even deeper idea. First, it's a check. You hit the white king, and no matter how white blocks, for example, with a knight, with a pawn, black's idea quite often is to slide back and try to trade off these queens. Black, remember, is a bit cramped due to the structure in the middle, white having more space here, these pawns against these slightly inferior black pawns in the middle. So swapping pieces when you are a bit cramped is normally a big benefit. Here I'm expecting Pragg, if this does happen, to block. Most likely he would push a pawn forward. He wouldn't want the queens to disappear from the board because then black is doing very well. Actually, long term, if anyone, black is better because black has a very nice bishop coming out to a diagonal. White's bishop tends to be the worst minor piece on the board. So, yeah, it looks very natural. I'm slightly surprised Magnus is hesitating and delaying this queen move. He does go for it, however, after a bit of a think. And we might well see the players race down that variation. Magnus doesn't need to rush by retreating his queen. He could also, for example, bring out his knight to a very nice square on f5. This is quite thematic as well. The dream home for black's knight. You could make an argument for bringing the other knight out. Very flexible, this black, very solid. But yeah, Jovanka, what do you think? You mentioned that this isn't what you recommend, or this isn't part of your repertoire, this exact position as black.
It is now after this knight move by Pragg, and you can see Magnus has gone for the most thematic approach, which is to develop the knight to the f5 square. This is the perfect square for such a knight in the Carlsen, and he offers a trade of queens. Again, so far so good. Magnus is doing all the right things, and he's breaking out now. He's challenging White's pawn center, and this, as a Carol player, gives me great joy, because when you do this, it's either good, as in really good, or it's going to be bad. And here, I think it's perfect.
Yeah, it looks like good timing from Magnus just before White started kicking back the black pieces. For example, starting to kick back the black queen. Magnus has broken out, and also this creates a nice square for the black knight, which was previously occupied by a pawn. I think here he's also very happy, if we do see a bunch of exchanges, to even give up his bishop for the white knight. In these types of scenarios, White's bishop still struggles to get to a decent square. Black's knights, once this one develops, they're just perfectly placed. And yeah, if he can avoid any direct consequences right now, Magnus, he's survived the opening.
Yeah.
he's got a very healthy position as black.
Yeah.
That's going to make him happy. We did hear in that video before the game, Magnus summing up the season and talking about Pragg, a matchup he's enjoyed a lot this season, and praising Pragg, saying he's never fearful when he plays against Magnus. And Magnus has kind of enjoyed it, but also struggled with Pragg just going at it in every single game. Is this Pragg going at it already?
Yeah, Pragg hasn't taken a simple approach against the Caro-Kann. There are many ways to play it safe against this opening, but this isn't necessarily one of them.
No, certainly not. And he does capture the pawn. And as David indicated, the bishop captures. And he's Pragg is playing in aggressive style, directly attacking the queen, seizing space. So I find that this type of chess for white is quite risky, but also very ambitious at the same time. Why is it risky, people could be asking me? And that's primarily to do with the pawn structure and the control of the half-open lines. If black were to get safely developed and even into an endgame, then they would have all the trumps in this position, primarily because they have a target to attack the e5 pawn and also a half-open c line for a rook to start exerting pressure.
Yeah, long-term, black is doing great, but the short-term factors could maybe involve the black king struggling to find safety. Black's king, if it does castle on the usual side, the king side, you notice the black h pawn is maybe not ideally placed. And
you might even see black actually leave the king in the centre. And the king is quite a fickle creature in this particular variation of the Caro-Kann. It goes where it's safest. It doesn't commit itself too early.
Yeah. One of my favourite games that I played in the Caro-Kann as black was when I castled on move 37 as black. So I castled queenside.
Naughty, David.
Yeah. I think my opponent, famous commentator Jon Ludvig Hammer, he nearly jumped out of his chair when I castled queenside. He forgot it was still legal. But yeah, so often here, I mean, that just kind of illustrates the fact that black's king doesn't necessarily need to make a decision as long as the centre is blocked with pawns.
Yeah.
And I think as soon as Pragg starts to hint at an attack, then we'll see Magnus kind of declare his intentions with the black king.
And
sooner.
Whilst Pragg is thinking, it's the perfect time to introduce our puzzle of the day. We have another fantastic puzzle for you guys at home to solve. Now, this one is a real mind-boggling one. I think David described it to me as one of the hardest mate in twos ever. It is white to play, and it was actually composed by Charles Alexander Gilbert, and get this, you're going to be so impressed, in 1877.
Wow.
So it's a pretty old, pretty historic, but legendary puzzle. And you guys at home, this one's for you.
Yeah.
Tweet us your answer using the hashtag #ChessChamps, and when you solve it, you will enjoy the feeling of solving one of the most beautiful mate in twos ever.
Yeah, that's what David said. The most beautiful mate in two he's ever seen. He brought it to the studio today. It's super difficult. Take a picture of it and enjoy it today. Work on it with your friends and family. Send us a picture of how you're working on the puzzle and let us know if you can do it or if you're struggling with it.
Yep. You have to be really creative with this one. I won't give too many hints, but think outside the box. And again, process of elimination. Look at all the checks first, look at all the captures first, look at all the direct attempts. But the real answer is very hidden. So good luck to everyone out there trying to solve it. And try not to use a computer.
Yeah.
We will know, because it's a very human kind of way to appreciate the answer to this puzzle.
Definitely.
And meanwhile, Magnus just centralises the black rook. Also very sensible. We could see a puzzle-like finish to this game, potentially, if Pragg can build up some attack.
I kind of envision this now because Christmas break is getting closer. I kind of want to bring this puzzle home for Christmas and just, you know, sit by the fireplace and put it up on an actual chessboard and sit there and work on it for hours and hours.
It will be. You will have to use some brain power on this one.
And it's going to be fine. When you guys tweet the answer today, I will have forgotten when I get home for Christmas, and we'll start on scratch working on it.
Yeah.
No problem.
No, I mean that actually happens to all of us, Kaya. I mean, today I also brought in a puzzle just to show David and also the crew, and it's my favourite puzzle ever. And I still had kind of more or less forgotten the answer, and then I was like figuring out. I was like, yes, Yes.
Still got it.
Yeah. I mean, try to solve it yourself, I have to say, because there is nothing better than that eureka moment when you figured out a puzzle. It's like you're a detective solving a crime and you're like, I got it. I know who did it.
And I will say about this puzzle, the second move is memorable. You'll never, ever forget the answer once you spot the second move.
Yeah.
So, yeah, try your best to solve it at home.
We do have a couple moves on the board. Is anything changing at all? The bar is very much still.
In the middle, almost.
Yeah.
Essentially, Magnus has committed. He's said, I'm not going to castle queenside. He's moved his rook across, and that black rook was attacked by White's bishop. White's bishop now does look like a pretty decent piece, covering some key squares, but essentially the status quo has been maintained. The centre is still closed, and we'll see the game enter a manoeuvring phase in the next few turns.
Okay, so that means we have time to bring up another chess game. A very special tweet came out earlier today. It's I actually got a message. It's a tweet that has already gotten 14.5 million likes on Cristiano Ronaldo's Twitter page. It's this picture of Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo playing a chess game on top of a Louis Vuitton suitcase, a checkered suitcase. How cool of a picture is that? And of course, the moment we saw this, we thought, wait, what kind of a game are they playing? Are they playing an actual chess game? And David, you took a look at this. What do you think?
Yes, it is an actual game. It's taken from a real-life game between the two greatest chess players in the world. These are the two greatest footballers playing right now, for sure. This is a game between Magnus Carlsen and Hikaru Nakamura from Norway Chess 2017. We had to zoom in. We had to work out which pieces were on which squares. It's slightly confusing, the dimensions, but this was from a real game. And it looks like it's black to play in the position. So it's Messi's move. Messi is black. Ronaldo is white in this position. And as we saw in that game between Carlsen and Nakamura, the Messi and Ronaldo of chess, it did end up in a draw. So here White has an extra bishop. White would be winning the game if it's his move. If it's White to play, the queen will step forward, hitting the black king. But the game did end with a draw. The black queen came across, gave a check. The black queen stepped back, and the checks continued. No way to escape a perpetual check. So it's very fitting between Ronaldo and Messi, the two greatest players in the world, greatest footballers. It was a draw.
And how cool that when they did this photo shoot, they found an actual chess game and they decided to make it a chess game between Magnus and Hikaru. Whose idea do you think it was? Ronaldo, maybe, who's met Magnus several times?
Quite possibly. I remember Magnus kicking off at some Real Madrid matches when Ronaldo was there. Maybe that was an inside joke between them. Maybe they just thought, oh, we're the two greatest footballers of our time. Who are the two greatest chess players, most famous chess players of their time? I think that would be Magnus and Hikaru. I'm not sure who's who. Would Magnus be Ronaldo? Would Hikaru be Ronaldo?
Wait, so who was white in that Magnus-Hikaru game?
I think Magnus was
I think Magnus was white. We'll have to get that confirmed, but...
Magnus was white.
Yeah.
Ronaldo, Magnus, Messi, Nakamura.
I bet Cristiano Ronaldo brought this game and said he wanted to be white and be Magnus Carlsen.
It's quite possible. And yeah, maybe in future years they'll reenact a game between Magnus and Pragg, two of the greatest players of this generation.
How cool.
Know.
Yeah, you never know. No, I have to say that is seriously cool. Yeah. And I love the kind of iconic Louis Vuitton checkerboard style. So it's perfect fusion. Yeah. Football stars, chess, Louis Vuitton.
Yeah.
Golden three.
It's beautiful.
And meanwhile, a long think now from Magnus Carlsen. Pragg has played a very mysterious move, the white rook coming across. It's lining up against the black queen, but it's not 100% clear what the plan is for Pragg. I think he's just saying to Magnus, you can't improve your position. The black king is a bit stranded, doesn't really want to commit and castle yet. So, yeah, it's definitely the ball in Magnus's court.
It's quite interesting because the players are actually still following 2 games from my database.
Wow.
So this has all been seen before.
I found this on the web.
Whoops, that was my phone. I'm sorry, everyone.
You know, this was has happened to me during commentary as well.
Me too.
My bad.
But you know, in the chess game, that would be a loss.
I'll be defaulted.
That's true.
And it's also part of the chess nightmare. You know, I always have, like, I'm turning up to a chess tournament, I'm getting ready to play my first game, and in this nightmare, I have like an iPad, I have 3 phones, I have my computer with me. Why I have all these devices, I don't know, and I cannot switch them off. And but I was just going to say about this particular position is that White's rook move is actually signifying an intent to expand even further on the left side of the board, to pick up the B pawn, move it 2 squares forward, attack the queen, and just to make Black's life very uncomfortable there on the left and also the right. Because remember, White is just trying to swarm the position, just trying to take as much space as possible and suffocate Black.
Yeah, and Magnus will feel that suffocating effect if he can't find any productive moves right now. I really worry for the Norwegian's position. The evaluation bar says Black is fine. It's not a significant advantage for White, but it's just about plans. And White does have a clear plan, as Ivanka mentioned. White wants to push his B-pawn next move. What does Magnus do in the meantime? It's a bit of a mystery to me. And we can just show that, just to illustrate it on the board, to make it clear. White wants to push his pawn forward. That's why he shifted his rook across, just to defend the c-pawn. For example, if Black just waits, I'm not sure how, moves his rook, for example, then White's b-pawn could step forward, kicking back the Black queen. And the Black queen doesn't have too many squares, to be honest. She has to be careful where she steps. And White now would have an option to push this pawn forward, kicking the knight away, maybe even push this pawn forward, hitting the queen at some point. And the advance continues. White's pawns are taking so much space. And the reason why Magnus is stuck is because castling here does feel wrong. If Black castles, then at some point, White will move his knight away. I'm not sure whether he does that now or on the next few moves, but this is the big target. Sometimes advancing pawns in front of your king can have long-term consequences, and this is a very severe consequence. You can't really defend it. For example, pushing your pawn forward, because suddenly White's bishop enters in the dark squares and there are too many holes in front of the Black king. White will later utilize these with a mating threat, mating attack.
Yeah, and I don't like castling at all, and primarily also because the Black queen is far divorced from her king. You kind of, if your king is under fire, you always want your queen to be close to the king. If she's divorced and moved further away, then this is bad news.
Moved on in life, this queen.
Queens are great pieces, but they're also, you know, fantastic attackers. They're also excellent defenders. And when your king is going to withstand some heavy onslaught, you really need your queen there. And wow,
after
I was
almost
not
6
expecting
minutes,
this move
Magnus makes this move.
I thought that Magnus would actually slow down the play and go backwards with the queen, just in anticipation of White's pawn move. But instead, he just accelerates everything. Wow.
And this is a pawn sacrifice. If this pawn is captured by Pragg, then there's a double attack on the Black queen. The Black queen has to run now. She's hit by the rook and by the pawn. I guess she'll step back. Magnus is arguing that suddenly the centre's blocked in a different way. Yes, he's a pawn down, but this pawn isn't going to survive long term. The 2 Black knights are eyeing it up. The rook is eyeing it up, and he will regain it in favourable circumstances later. The big question for me is whether Pragg can continue his attack. This is exactly what you mentioned, Ivanka. This is what he wanted to do anyway. And now the Black queen would have to move. I'm not sure where she runs to. I guess she wants to evacuate the c-file. And again, Pragg could, for example, step forward. And this one gets really complicated. It feels like Black is living on the edge. Maybe you can take a pawn to counterattack against the White queen. Suddenly the queen is hit, the Black knight is hit, and it gets complicated.
Wow.
Calculation is required. That's why Pragg suddenly has his head in his hands. He's realising that Magnus is playing with fire and he will want to find a way to take advantage.
Thinking for 1 minute now. So we're going to head to San Francisco. It's a big day there. Magnus can decide the tour finals in a big match against Pragg. And Tanya, what's happening in and around where the players are sitting in the arena?
Kaya, we've got Adisa here with us, who's the man behind running the Hip Hop Chess Federation, as well as 64 Blocks that brings together jiu-jitsu and chess. I know, mind-blowing. And he's here to tell us how he does it all. Adisa, it's amazing to have you here with us. Thank you so much for joining.
I'm just happy you're here in the Bay, and you came at a perfect time. The weather's great, champions are great. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much, and it's amazing to have the event happening in San Francisco, in the Bay Area. What's it like to have all these chess players around here?
I'm only used to seeing this in St. Louis, so I'm super happy because the weather's better, and so is the food. You know what I'm saying? So I'm happy. It's exciting.
Adisa, I was amazed to hear the kind of stuff that you're doing here. And I really want to ask you, tell us, I want to start with the Hip Hop Chess Federation. How did that idea even come into your head?
Well, what happened is I was working with some kids in juvenile hall. I asked them if they played chess, and like 90% of the kids played chess, but they made poor decisions as human beings. I'm like, how can so many kids that play chess end up in juvenile hall? So I started working on a program to use the lyrics from rap music, because rap music actually celebrates chess more than any other form of music, to kind of lure them into playing the game. And it worked really well. I ended up bringing in, you know, Wu-Tang members like RZA and GZA and a bunch of other high-end, high-profile rappers to help. And we did work in St. Louis in 2014, Living Like Kings. I was the guest curator at the World Chess Hall of Fame. And that was the second biggest opening day that they've ever had, except for like Bobby Fischer. You know what I mean? So we beat Bobby Fischer's exhibit, which is unbelievable. But that's only because chess is so, I mean, chess and hip hop are so loved, right, by young people.
That's incredible. And I want to ask you, did you see a big draw that was with the kids when they saw hip hop come along with chess?
Well, yeah, I did, because, you know, once you tell them, like, look, you know, RZA and GZA from Wu-Tang play, Will Smith is a player, 50 Cent is a player, right? It doesn't mean that they're high-level players, but that they're thinking about structure, about risk, about, you know what I mean, about coming back from loss. And so these are the things that we say, if you can do that on the board, you can do it in your life.
You mentioned that that's one genre of music that really celebrates chess in a big way. Do you have a favorite bar?
I do. Well, I have the song Weak Spot by Wu-Tang Clan. One of my homies, GZA, he says, I stay on 64 squares while patrolling the center, trading space for material, the time zone I enter. It's a calculated movement from push pieces, advanced development. Once the pawn reaches the 8th rank, now heavily armed with a tank, my opponent's base is threatened, soldiers cut with shanks. This is the kind of stuff that's very much inside the space of hip hop, but you're not always gonna see it in the pop artists. So, you know, you gotta dig for it, but it's absolutely there.
Has it always amazed you, the kind of analogies that come out of the chessboard?
Yeah, I mean, it's there. You know, these analogies are as infinite as the moves in the game itself, and that's why it's always enriching, and that's why you guys are here now, because, right, like, the game is still super relevant, not just in the hood, but around the world.
Now, you started with the Hip Hop Chess Federation, and then you moved on to combine jiu-jitsu, one of the fastest growing martial art forms, along with chess. Tell us about that. How did that happen?
So I'm a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I teach it. And I started seeing correlations between chess methodologies and Jiu-Jitsu methodologies. And I was like, you know, America needs more, and young people need more physical and mental balance, right? So they work hard on Jiu-Jitsu, they work hard on the chessboard, the meditation centers them to improve both, and the results have been fantastic.
And what have you noticed the similarities between these two? Because the first thought is, wait, how does chess fit in with jiu-jitsu?
Well, chess is very strategic, and jiu-jitsu is very strategic as a martial art. They're like, if two people start fighting, there's a measured way where if one grabs the other, there's a response. If he knows it. If they do that response, there are 3 variant responses. And these things, it's just like chess. So for me, chess is jiu-jitsu for the mind, and jiu-jitsu is chess for the body.
Wow, and I can also imagine there being all these correlations between these tactical themes in chess, as well as the tactics and strategy used to, well, in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, Zugzwang, like using small movements to prevent advancement. You know, Zwisch and Zug, like moves to, like, you know what I mean? To just
setting traps.
Yeah, exactly. You can set up traps. You can set up forked attacks, right? So you can go from an arm lock to a triangle choke to another thing called an omoplata. It's a shoulder lock. But these things in a jiu-jitsu player's mind, they fire off instantly. You know?
Wow, I love it. Have you seen an improvement in one of them affect performance in the other?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so you can see, like, sometimes people can get a chess concept and apply it on the mat, like, same day. So traditionally, when I was teaching at Zaytuna College over here in Berkeley, when I was teaching in, like, 2017, we do rounds of chess and rounds of rolling back to back. Also, to make you, like, have to play chess under a high-stress situation, because now you're half out of breath, you don't even, you know, you almost got choked, and now you're trying to figure out how to win the game. And then the bell rings and you go back to the mats. So it's intense.
Love it. And Adisa, tell us that the training in jiu-jitsu and chess and this academy that you run, how has that impacted your students' lives outside the academy?
Well, you know, when I was doing Hip Hop Chess Federation, which I shut down in 2019, I had seen a lot of that. 64 blocks is brand new, but we're starting to roll out in Redwood City at a place called the Afro Bushido Academy. You can follow me at Real64Blocks on Instagram, at Real64Blocks, and you can learn more there. In 2023, we're going to roll out the website, and we'll show everything then.
We are so happy to have you here with us. And before we let you go, the final question, who are you rooting for here at the Meltwater Champions Chess Tour Final?
Oh, man, you got to put me on. I mean, like, I love Carlsen. I love everybody, but like, I like to see his ups and downs, and I like to see his determination. That's impressive, because it's easy when you're killing everybody to just show up and whatever, but when you got to rethink, restructure, and refocus to win again, that's where I see the champion, you know. And so I'm inspired by him in his consistent returns.
Thank you so much. And there we have it, Kaya. Some inspiring stuff going on in the Bay Area here with Adisa. Follow him on Instagram for more information and where you can find this academy. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, and come back to the Bay as soon as you can. Everybody, come back, come back. I need you to stay, hang out.
That is so cool. Hip Hop Chess Federation. Is that the next thing you're getting involved in, David?
It's definitely on my list. And next time I'm in the Bay, I know who to contact.
Yeah.
For chess, jiu-jitsu, for everything. Yeah.
How cool. All right, we had quite a few moves on the board. The bar has been quite significantly up for Pragg. Now it's more towards the middle. What's happening in the game?
Yeah, and just while Tanya and Adisa were talking, Jovanka and I were discussing the position. It feels like Magnus, he's managed to get over the worst, but he had to walk a bit of a tightrope to get here. And just to refresh, just to show the moves that we missed there a moment ago, White did indeed start pushing pawns forward. We mentioned that b4, b5, throwing the pawns forward, gaining time against the black pieces. That was about to happen. It did indeed happen, and this was a critical moment because maybe the most natural moves here, the knight is kind of attacked. The most natural move here would be to either jump into the centre or to jump to the side of the board. But these would have been decisive mistakes. For example, jumping into the centre now after a trade of knights, White doesn't necessarily need to get greedy and take this pawn back. Instead, White could step either one square forward or one square to the side. And the whole idea now is that you cut across this diagonal. Black's king cannot castle through check and therefore is stranded for the rest of the game. The king is an easy target now. White will try and regain this pawn and try to break through to the back rank. This would have been just too scary for Black, too dangerous. And therefore, Magnus found a really important retreat. He stepped his knight back, guarding the diagonal. So now the queen stepping forward, for example, wouldn't cut across. Black could still safely castle the king. And as we saw in the game, that meant that Pragg had nothing better than rook takes pawn, and Magnus's king finally does find safety. Better late than never. It castled on move 22. That's very late in chess. And now that he has castled, he can look forward to the future with confidence.
Okay.
White stepping back with his queen. I'm expecting Magnus at some point to bring the knight into the game.
Sitting behind Pragg there in San Francisco is Wesley So, today fighting a very important match against Jan-Christoph Duda. They both know that if Magnus loses today, they have chances to win the tour finals, both Wesley So and Jan-Christoph Duda. And here in game one, Duda with the white pieces, the bar has been up for Wesley So almost from the start, actually. Do you think Wesley is winning that game one?
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say winning, but he's doing very well. And you can tell on Duda's face, he doesn't look too happy about his position. Normally when Duda's confident, we see the lean back, the smile from the Polish fighter there. But yeah, difficult start, and that continues a run now of kind of maybe substandard, subpar play from Duda. We saw yesterday just the anger, at himself, the frustration, blundering a few times, losing a few games to Pragg, letting it slip in the Armageddon when Pragg had only 25 seconds left. He could have prolonged that game, maybe one on the clock, but yeah, Duda, it feels like things are going against him, and sometimes that's hard to turn that trend in chess.
Yeah, and there we see the knight spring forward to the centre, attacking the rook, and the rook duly moves to the fourth row. So Pragg is potentially getting ready to switch over to the right side if needed and attack the black king. So Thinking back to Duda's reaction yesterday, that was so natural. Yeah. I mean, I have to say, how many of us have reacted in exactly the same way, using the exact same swear words? Oh, it was so human, actually. And I'm really glad that Duda revealed that, actually, that side to him, because often, especially when over-the-board chess, everyone is kind of really stoic, and you don't see that reaction unless it's private. And here it was raw, just fury.
Yeah, that's the difference, right, between over-the-board chess and online chess. Often there isn't a camera in your face, but players do get more emotional. They're not afraid to express themselves. But I think you're right, Jovanka. At the board, even if I'm furious, even if I want to throw the pieces, even if I want to punch the wall, you know, you have to suppress it. And that's why this tour's been so refreshing. We see the players showing their passion. All of these guys, they want to win more than anything else in the world. They don't care about anything other than that full point, the victory. And Duda really displaying his emotions yesterday. Meanwhile, Magnus offering to exchange rooks. What do you think, Jovanka? You're the Caro-Kann expert in the house. Yeah. If all the major pieces come off the board, if the rooks and queens disappear, who would you prefer then?
I would prefer... It's equal, really. I mean, I want to say in principle I prefer black, but no, I mean, I have to be honest. I think black has a tremendous knight on d5, also a fantastic knight on f5. They're on outposts, they can't really be chased away, but I'm not going to take away the fact that white also has great pieces and control of the open lines. So it's a very, very balanced game at the minute, and I don't see it going too wrong for either side.
Yeah. So you think even though Magnus is down under 3 minutes, it's within controllable margins here? Yeah. For black? Yeah. It's just those two black knights. They're so glorious. They hold everything together. Yeah.
I mean, I don't think black is in any trouble. I mean, the only thing I would say that black should be slightly careful of is the king. You must always watch out for the king, because white's pieces are primed and ready to at a right time to switch over and start attacking the one weak spot in the position, which is the h5 pawn. If you attack that pawn and black isn't ready, then you're looking at some trouble.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's this pawn, the only weakness in the game. That's why I love black's last move so much, swinging the rook across just to distract white to try and trade off pieces. If black had been too slow, for example, maybe pushing this pawn forward, then just as an example, after an exchange of pawns, white could already be tempted to switch attention and even throw a pawn forward. I'm not sure you want to do this immediately. It's very risky, but the white rook would be able to swing across, and there might be some threats against the black king. But this was not allowed by Magnus. He offered this exchange of rooks, tying white down here. And yes, white's retreated. White's knight wants to aim into some juicier squares, potentially. But Magnus has finally activated his last piece. And I think that's a great sign. The evaluation bar agrees. Suddenly the position's turning in black's favour. This black rook maybe shouldn't have been allowed into the game. And after a trade, suddenly black is the one conquering the open file.
I agree with you there. I mean, Pragg is being very, like, one-track. He's playing with a one-track mind. He just wants to attack on the right side. But you have to be so careful in these type of positions not to allow black to overrun in the centre. And, you know, look how passive he is. He's attacking on the back row. I mean, black's rook, perfectly placed. The queen is now going to come in. I mean, there's no reason for black to even think about defending that pawn. I mean, you can defend it, of course, but why should you?
Yeah. I think you called it with this queen move that Magnus has just chosen. The black queen suddenly is active, tying white down to some pieces over here, some pawns on the left side. If white now does get greedy and grab this pawn, it feels like there should be consequences. I don't see it immediately, but white's attack still needs time to build up. Black's rook could start coming in, for example. This does look a bit scary for white to deal with, some tension along the second rank. This knight is temporarily defended by white's bishop, but finally black would be able to start trying to capture it. I mean, you also have to worry about this knight coming in at some point. Even black just going greedy and grabbing some pawns. As long as there's no checkmate against the black king, then Magnus should be happy enough. And we're going to see this critical variation. This is the acid test of what Magnus here is doing. And, OK, he does take this pawn, so both queens have got greedy. Black's queen is far divorced, as you coined, from its king. So maybe that's one worrying sign for black. but white is only attacking with a queen right now. The bishop doesn't really do anything. White's bishop is hitting thin air. It has to be joined by the knight. We are going to see Pragg here go all in. It's as if he's thrown all of his chips into the center. He's saying, I'm going for checkmate. I'm going for something against the black king. But the two black knights will act as defenders, and Magnus is calling the bluff. He's saying, no, I don't care. I'm just going to take all the pawns.
Wow.
Anka, I mean, the evaluation bar seems to say black is just almost winning now. Does that mean that Pragg has just got nothing? Maybe he's just hoping for tricks?
Well, to a computer who cold-bloodedly works it all out, Pragg has definitely got nothing. But to a human, this does look very scary. So, I mean, first reactions would be like, first going forward, can some piece come to the f6 square and sacrifice itself, you know, to open up lines against the black king? Another option is just to retreat the bishop, just to make way for the knight to jump to g5. Sadly, there's just no way in for the white rook. And finally, my last attempt at attacking would be to push my g-pawn forward and dislodge that knight on f5.
Yeah, and this is a funny trick that Magnus has up his sleeve. I think if the pawn steps forward, he doesn't need to move his knight. He can trap the white queen on the edge of the board. And that would be a sad end to the game for Pragg. But this is the type of thing that can happen if you get overexcited and if you try to attack when you're not fully ready. So Pragg has to be a bit careful here. I agree. He wants to push this pawn, maybe. He wants to get his knight into the game. He can't get his rook in. One move that comes to my mind would be maybe moving the bishop up with gain of tempo to the black rook and then maybe trying to jump in with the white knight. But no, Pragg does indeed just shuffle his rook across. He moves his rook to d1, but what is that doing? Is he getting ready to sacrifice his rook, potentially?
Yeah, he has to be. I mean, otherwise it's just a very mysterious rook move. So rook takes knight, potentially threatened with the idea of them following it through with some more sacrifices.
For example, if white gets given time to take this knight off the board, suddenly white can jump in with a check. And here it's very unclear whether black is able to jump and stop any checkmates in time. Yeah, this is Pragg's idea, to play rook takes knight, removing a defender, taking this piece off the board. But Magnus does have one move here. He needs to potentially defend against that threat or counterattack somehow. And black is winning. Black has 2-point advantage according to the computer, but you need to be careful. The margin for error is tiny.
Yeah, and I just wanted to highlight one other threat that white has potentially is to actually just come in with the knight to f6 immediately.
Yeah, jump in anyway. For example, if the pawn captures, then, as soon as the black knight moves, for example, if it steps back to capture this bishop, then white does have ideas at some point of bringing the rook in with a devastating back rank checkmate. So Pragg, he's not out of resources yet. Maybe we can see the top moves, the top suggestions from Stockfish. How narrow is Magnus's path to defend this position? He's a pawn up as black, but how many moves does he have to survive? OK, it says that black has got a decisive advantage if he finds 2 moves and they both attack this white knight in the center of the board. This is a target, it's undefended, so you can attack it with the black rook or you can attack it with the black queen. This is not 100% easy. Neither of those moves are maybe the ones that are first on the radar. They're not clear candidate moves. The third choice for the computer.
I was laughing at that one. I mean, that's so random. That's just to absolutely ignore white's threats. So,
okay. Oh, and he doesn't find any of the top 3 moves, Magnus. Does that give Pragg a winning move? No. It's just level again, and it's back in the balance. It's all about whether Pragg can break through with a sacrifice. If he can't, then he'll have to look for other avenues. Maybe he'll now sidestep his rook to try and get in on the open c-file. It's still very tense from a human point of view, practical point of view. It's looking scary. I think white is going to be very happy here. Pragg with an extra minute on the clock. He's the one attacking. It's always easier to attack with less time. And let's go back to the players. Is Magnus sweating? Is he showing any signs of nerves? It always seems to be this kind of narrative between the two. It's always Pragg attacking, always Magnus reacting. It's very rarely like that in any of Magnus's games against any other opponent. It's incredibly impressive from the young Indian player. We thought just a few moves ago he was running out of steam, he was running out of ideas, but there he goes, he drops back the queen. Stockfish did confirm a few moments ago that this was one of white's best moves, lining up the queen with the black king, some tricks there potentially. Yeah.
And Magnus will now be considering what Pragg is threatening, and that's why he runs away with the king, because white was potentially threatening to advance the h-pawn, maybe come in to f6 with a piece sacrifice, and Magnus desperately trying to clarify the situation. He's keeping his king in safety, and at the same time, we see Pragg return the queen to where she came from, and so does the king. So will we see a draw by threefold repetition?
It's possible. This is the second time we've seen this position now. If Pragg steps back with the white queen, he's asking Magnus that question. Do you want a draw? And they can't offer draws, or they won't offer draws. They'll just... I mean, it's a battle of mind games now. Would you take the draw here if you were Pragg? Would you play on? Would you keep risking to try and break through and checkmate?
No, the problem is that if I were Pragg, I'm playing against Magnus Carlsen, so I would take the draw. I can't handle the tension. Well, we're going to see whether Magnus is feeling ambitious and wants to play on, or is he satisfied with a draw?
Magnus down at around 30 seconds, though. It would be so brave to take a risk now and not repeat the position. Black's king does look like it's a target, but Magnus is the one to reject the draw, reject the repetition. He offers a trade of rooks, stepping back Black's knight. Will he live to regret that decision, though?
Well, it's looking like it's going to be a great round for the players with the black pieces, at least in the other 3 matches, bar all the way over to Wesley So's side, to Argaisi's side, and to Mamadyarov's side. Question is, can Magnus Carlsen also win with the black pieces? Listening to you guys, I guess anything can happen in this game.
Yeah.
Definitely. As long as the queens stay on the board, Pragg has great attacking chances. Black is 1 pawn up, though, so if the queens disappear, those 2 black pawns will win the game. And Pragg's giving up a piece. He's dropped his bishop in the heart of Black's position. This is a piece sacrifice, because now after a rook trade, there's no more pin. Black can actually... Black can maybe grab this bishop. You have to calculate this very carefully. Can you just call Pragg's bluff and take this white bishop off the board? Computer seems to think Black is winning.
Is Magnus reacting to this? Let's see Magnus as well.
Yeah, we need to watch both players here, because the nerves will be jangling for both of them. He doesn't bite the bullet. He doesn't take White's bishop, and I think that was a good decision. If you had taken White's bishop, the white queen would have come to the top of the board, delivered a nasty check. But look at this Black retreat, blocking the white queen's entry points. And suddenly Pragg, he's really gone all in again.
10 seconds. And I think the thing is, he's burnt his bridges.
Yeah.
That knight retreat is such a good defensive move. And if that bishop moves, well, suddenly the e5 pawn falls and Magnus is completely winning. And the queen slides over 1 square. But Magnus, he's just forcing an endgame.
Yeah, he's closing the door. Every time White's queen tries to get in behind the black pieces, Magnus shuts down, either with his queen or with his knights. Black only has good defensive pieces left, and finally he does get greedy. He does seize the moment to take White's bishop. So right now, Black is a whole knight ahead. But will the Black king survive? It feels like Black's king should have enough defenders around it. Those 2 black knights are just great pieces, but some dangerous checks. You can't take your eye off the ball. 15 seconds for Magnus now. White's queen is threatening to check from the front, maybe. Occasionally she can try and jump in along the diagonal and check from behind, but Magnus, he needs to move. How does he keep his king safe? He tries to run forward out into the open. He's going to keep advancing down the board. That is counterintuitive, but it looks safe enough for now. There's no checks with the white queen. White's knight can give a check, however. Maybe that's what we'll see Pragg do.
Yeah. And I'm actually predicting that that knight will retreat at the right time to h6. And this is why Pragg just moved his queen 1 square to the side. You know, she's threatening to give a check on h5, or a knight is going to jump in. And, Magnus using the whole board just to defend his king. Look how the queen gave a check and then she returned all the way back. Such classy move.
Yeah, really, really nice use of geometry there, using all the angles. Suddenly the queen and king, they're back together, they've reunited, and that does spell maybe the end for Praggnanandhaa. He gives a check with his knight. Now Black's king has to march into the eye line of the white queen. This was the only safe square, sorry. It's so exciting right now. But Pragg, the problem is you can give a discover check, but Black's queen will block, and you're just a knight down. No more compensation. You have to trade the queens, and that will spell the end.
Yeah.
I love this beautiful romantic story. Ivanka saying early in the game that the queen and king had divorced, and now David saying they're reunited.
Back together again.
And that's going to win the game for Magnus.
It is going to win the game for Magnus, and still there's a margin to go wrong, especially with the Black King so open. But OK, he has some great pieces surrounding his king. Those knights, they're fantastic defenders. I'm fully expecting Magnus to actually capture the knight, queen takes, and step back with the queen. And there we go. It is going to be game over. There's just really no way that the White Queen can fight all alone against Black's army. I mean, just take a look at those two pawns there, the A and the B pawns. They're just going to promote.
Yep, those two black pawns are going to start running sooner rather than later. And white pawns, they look pretty good, but the problem is, as soon as you start advancing them, you weaken the White King. The White King is on the wrong side of the board. You have to try this. There's simply nothing else for Pragg but the Queen and Knight together for Black. They're just going to defend everything. They're going to hold everything. If Black can force a queen trade, that's game over. Those two black pawns will decide. That's what Magnus is trying to do. Planting his knight in the centre. Unless there's some miraculous perpetual check now from Praggnanandhaa, then he can essentially resign. But look at this. Black's king yet again hides on the side of the board and no more checks. Any queen check will just result in a queen trade. And, yeah, you're running out of any positive ideas here now for White.
7 seconds, 5 seconds. The clock is ticking for Pragg, and he retreats the king. I mean, there's really nothing for it. He just has to push his pawns forward and hope for the best. And here comes Alice. She's wandering down the board.
Yeah, we saw Pragg shake his head. He knows that he's relying on a huge blunder now. Also, the clock times are against him. Magnus was down at a few seconds when he was defending for his life, but he's built up a huge time advantage almost at the 1 minute mark now. And again, just centralising his queen. He's trying to say, yes, the White Queen can go and capture Black's pawns, but then the White pawns would fall. And, yeah, any defensive idea here would involve weakening the White King even further. Pragg now under 5 seconds. He does try and grab a pawn, but it's not going to be enough. Black's queen and knight are going to team up now, maybe even deliver some checkmating threats.
Yeah. I mean, the first move to calculate is actually the knight coming forward to the f4 square, and some deadly checkmating ideas on the board. And take a look at the Black King. It can do some running of its own as well. So everything is working in Magnus's favour. He's got a safe place to hide the king, queen and knight. Perfect attacking duo, and well, he's following the principles, putting the queen in the centre. She's controlling as many squares as possible. This is such a good technique. And Pragg, just 10 seconds left on the clock, and his position is dire.
And in the background, we see Wesley So. He has just won the first game today against Jan Christoph Duda. That means hopes for Wesley So of winning the tour finals. If Magnus loses the match today, right now, that's not looking good for Wesley. Magnus about to win.
Yeah, and this is the danger when you don't attack correctly, and when the attack fizzles out, you might just be material down. And here we do see, as Ivanka advocated, Black's king is going to start marching forward. Why not? White is attacking with only a queen. The safest way to avoid the checks is to hide behind the white pawns, to hide behind your own pieces, potentially. And here Black can just munch on that white H-pawn very safely, and the checks will start to dry up.
Only one move that Magnus must not play. He must not step forward with his king to the G4 square. If he does that, he's going to lose. He's going to get checkmated. But Magnus, he's too clever. He just centralises the queen. And, yep, that's it. We have a result. Magnus has won the first game.
With the black pieces taking the lead here, Magnus Carlsen. Impressive stuff. He will have the white pieces in 11 minutes.